We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to Finances, your home for all things financial, investment, money and lifestyle. Hosted and curated by the very talented team of certified financial planners at Burke, Britton Financial Partners. Welcome to episode 15. I think it's 15 of the Finances podcast. Ben,
Somewhere between 1 and 30.
So I'm your host, Jay Burke, Managing Director at Burke Britton Financial Partners. We've got a full house today, so joined by my co-host, regular co-host Ben Kemp, Certified Financial Planner here at Burke Britton, our founder and Principal Director, Peter Burke, and Chief Executive Officer of Kids Plus, Mr. Shaun Cannon. Welcome to the podcast, Shaun.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, really pleased to be here.
Yeah, we're pleased to have you here. And we were just having a chat before, the last 24 hours about what we'd talk about. And we could probably talk we joked about it now, we could talk for a long time. Peter likes an origin story, and we thought maybe we would, at the risk of going right back into the early generations, we'd start with the origin story of yourself, lead into Kids Plus, but also cross over where Burke Britton joined forces in some way, shape or form with Kids Plus. Now, I was looking for a bio for you, Shaun, and it must be a quality of a not-for-profit CEO that they don't like to talk about themselves that much. They prefer to put forward their organisation.
Spot on, Jay.
But we're going to make you feel a little bit uncomfortable today. We thought we might just start with your origin story, and I've got a little bit of background there, but I might let you talk to. Let's go back as far as you want to go back. Where were you born? Where were you raised? Where'd you go to school? And what led you to today?
No worries. So the origin story of Kids Plus is much more interesting and impressive than mine, but
we'll get there.
but in brief, so I grew up in Geelong family, and went to school here. Dad worked up at St. Joey's for a long time, and that's where I went. And then I went to Deakin and did an arts degree. And then thereafter, I've kind of pursued lots of really interesting careers. They've all had a focus on, I think, kind of human rights and social justice and those sorts of things, but I've kind of moved across industrial relations for a while and then moved into academia, ran a small human rights commission for a couple of years, and then spent a few years in banking working for the ANZ. And that was a really good experience because it opened up my eyes to philanthropy and trusteeship. So that got me really enthused in that sector. And then a couple of years kind of running an affiliate to the UN's Global Compact initiatives about trying to engage the private sector in sustainable development. So that was really interesting, a bit of an eye-opener. And then I must have been 6 or 7 years ago made the shift to taking on the role at Kids Plus, one that I haven't regretted for a moment.
Now, there was something I noticed when I was digging for your history, and I don't know whether it's a typo, you can talk to this, a Doctor of Philosophy.
Yeah, it's probably a fancy title for 5 or 6 years of hard grunt. Lots of reading, lots of writing. But so that was probably a bit of a labour of love at the time when I thought academia might have been the career direction for me. The PhD is really your kind of ticket to operate. So I undertook that with probably a long-term view that academia might be where I ended up, but that proved not to be the case.
Now, was there, like the move into philanthropy and sort of human rights, was there a connection there with family history? Is there something running through the blood? Where was that connection? Where was the decision for you to actually move down that path?
Not sure, really. I've thought about that a little bit. There was certainly no kind of defining moments that said this is the direction that I want to go, but probably instilled early on. Grew up with probably a pretty fair sense of what's right and wrong and justice and those sorts of things. And, you know, I probably thought that's just the direction I want to go career-wise. But there's never been any probably great planning around what I was going to do and when I was going to do it. Probably been fortunate, fell into some good roles at the right points in time. So a bit of luck more than great design.
Something I just add in there. I think sometimes, though, if you have that general feeling about what you want to do and your eyes are wide open, those opportunities just pop up. And, you know, sometimes like those opportunities can pass other people by. But if it's what you're thinking about, you're passionate about, you have a genuine interest in, those opportunities will suddenly go off in front of your face and you grab them. You've got to take a risk and step into those roles, but obviously it's an area that you were really keen on.
And I think that's interesting. Risk's an interesting thing because I think I'm inherently an unrisky kind of person, but career-wise I've probably taken a few risks. So
now, Kids Plus, you said 2014, is that right? You joined the Kids Plus board as CEO initially or in a different role?
Came in as CEO.
Okay. Yeah. Now, at the risk of ruining the chronology, I thought we might just rewind a little bit and hand over to Peter about the original introduction, because I was thinking about how we came to have the relationship we do with Kids Plus and have, I don't think I mentioned actually, Peter now being on the board and the finance committee, but maybe Peter, if you want to touch on, we were talking about this just offline before we started recording, about how fortuitously we ended up being connected with Kids Plus through Michael O'Malley and a walk through Kokoda, or from Kokoda to Owers.
Yeah, well, there's a few of my mates back in 2010. I had this desire that if my body would allow me, I'd love to do the Kokoda trek, and chatted to a few people started to talk about it and said, yeah, I'd like to go. And then Jay said, well, if you're going, you need someone to babysit you, so I better come too, because he wouldn't risk me going through Kokoda on my own.
Lucky I was there too.
Yeah, my word, it saved my life at the end. But we then were thinking, well, if we're going to do something like that, how could we actually make it worthwhile other than just the physical thing of walking? I mean, we needed to make it a bit more real and a bit more relevant than that. And just chatting amongst a group of us, and it happens that my current wife had a daughter who was born with cerebral palsy, and so that link back to Emily with cerebral palsy, we sort of opened the door, and I was introduced to and had a chat with Sarah Olive, who was your predecessor, I think, Shaun.
Yep.
And Sarah and I sat downstairs here in the cafe, which wasn't Darling's West then, and had a coffee. I talked about what we'd like to do, and she's really, really supportive of it, of course. And then over the course of about a 9-month period, we ended up raising nearly 40 grand with our trek. There's about 12 of us, I think, in the group. And Mick O'Malley and Tommy Couch were our trainers. They were the ones that actually managed the trek for us. It was a fantastic experience. But to come back and hand over a cheque of nearly 40 grand to Kids Plus back then, which was 2011, middle of 2011 when we handed the money over. And that sort of, from there was that interest with Kids Plus. I think that sort of flowed on to the future generation opportunity. I remember going to over there at the time, and I think back then they were looking after maybe 30 young people a month. It was just and I'd only been running for 6 or 8 years at that point. It was still really immature, really naive as a business, as an organisation. But it was pretty exciting, and that was a nice entree into our relationship with Kids Plus.
Well, I knew very little about Kids Plus, and I must admit I'm enjoying, looking forward to having you on today, Shaun, so I can sort of dig a little bit deeper into Kids Plus and the services and the background. I forgot in the introduction to actually talk about what Kids Plus actually does. So maybe I've got a tiny little bio here for Kids Plus, Shaun, but I think maybe you're more well versed to give us a elevator pitch, if you like, on Kids Plus, where it's based, what it specialises in, and what it aims to do for the community and the kids that are involved.
So I think the short summation is that Kids Plus has been around for nearly 20 years, which is really exciting. Established in 2003, and it was set up by a couple of allied health therapists and then a couple of families in the Geelong community that were really looking to try and get better specialist support for their children that had cerebral palsy at the time. And in essence, we're a specialist allied health provider. So we provide a range of therapy services to infants and children and teenagers and young adults that have primarily physical disabilities. So the team kind of consists of physios and occupational therapists, speech pathologists. We have a social worker on the team and support coordinators. And in its simplest form, essentially our role is to help support the young kids that we work with to live the life that they want to live.
Now, maybe going back to 2011, what sort of, you weren't there in 2011, but what type of growth, what sort of transformation has happened from the 20-year, like when it was originally founded with those parents and therapists looking for better options for kids, to where we are today? So maybe give us a bit of an overview of how much this organisation has grown, which will probably lead us into some of the big events and ways that we can support moving forward.
Yeah, so there's been a big shift, particularly in recent years. So probably the most significant thing is that for the first 10 or 12 years of Kids Plus history, service delivery was exclusively funded by philanthropy and community fundraising. So for about the first 10 years of Kids Plus's life, the capacity of the organisation was entirely dependent on how much the very small administrative team at Kids Plus could generate to then put on some allied health professionals then to provide services. So then when you get, contributions such that Peter was able to facilitate through Kokoda, makes an enormous difference to then your ability to be able to provide service provision. So probably between about 2003 to 2013, the organisation was kind of capped at being able to provide services to about 40 young people, simply because that was the amount of funding available to provide services. The big change came with the introduction of the NDIS. And the beauty of the NDIS is that it provides funding for families to go and access the services that they want to access. And the advantage for Kids Plus meant that we didn't have to adapt or change our model of service delivery. It just meant that for the first time we're actually getting paid to be able to deliver that services to those families. So now we work with about 300 families, and the team of therapists is around about 35. So from probably 2014, the team was probably 5 or 6, and we were working with about 70 families. And then there's been that, steady growth over the last 6 or 7 years. What we've found is that growth has kind of been about a net increase in client numbers of about 30 to 40 each year. And then to support that, there's been a corresponding increase in our staffing capacity. So what the NDIS does, it enables us to be able to provide essentially the right amount of supports for the required duration. What philanthropy and community support enables us to do is all those other kind of special things that are not part of core physical therapy and service delivery.
Would one of those examples be the Deakin facility in terms of the philanthropic support? I know, PB, do you want to maybe touch on that? Because
it's a pretty important thing that we feel we've had a little bit of a hand in, which is pretty exciting, yeah. I go back to when we were blessed. We had a conversation with our broker that was doing all the work for our clients about 2 of the shares that we invested in, the company called Future Generation, with 2 separate shares. And he said at the time, you guys have got such scale, I reckon it might be worth talking to the FG management, because they do this philanthropic thing, donate the money, they take a 1% management fee, and instead of using it, spending it, keeping it in the pockets of those that run the business, it's actually distributed to principally children's charities around Australia. So I organised a meeting, and we sat down with Jeff and a couple of the other people from Future Generation, and they said, yeah, we're really happy to actually allow you to make the decision. So all of our clients are blessed because the investments we make, the funds that are generated from management fees from our clients' investments, we then have the opportunity to allocate that at places we choose. So I then thought, this came on us fairly quickly, middle of, I think it was 2017 from memory, and it was just prior to the Deakin facility being finished. And I rang, I thought, right, Kids Plus, we had the link already. I rang and spoke to Shaun and went over to have a chat with you at the workplace in Myers Street, round the corner from the hospital, Bellarine Mire corner there somewhere. And it was still the tiny little place that I'd visited when Sarah was running things, and the only difference was there's probably a few more people there. But and we sat down and you sat me in front of the computer and started showing me all the images of the new facility at Deakin. And we began talking about what funding was still missing for the outside area, which still hadn't been funded. I said, well, what about, and don't quote me on exactly the number, I said, well, would a figure of about 165,000 help? And straight away, your reaction, Shaun, was, well, that outside area is going to cost us about 400. We've got a dollar for dollar philanthropist or someone prepared to support it. We might be able to do it at the same time rather than try and raise that money over 3 or 4 years. And so that was really exciting for me and then for us as a business to jump straight on board with you guys at Kids Plus and see that now that facility, immediately the facility was built, the outside, recreation area where the kids learn to ride a bike, learn to catch a ball, throw a ball. And I think a very personal thing, we were at the pre-Christmas family function just recently, before this Christmas, and the buzz for me to see all the young people, but with their siblings and their mums and dads out in that outside area just having a ball, like it was really powerful stuff. So that was how we began our relationship with Shaun and Kids Plus in the latter part with the new building. So that was a pretty big project, Shaun.
Yeah, it was really exciting. I mean, for many years we operated out of a small kind of facility in My Street, and then, we had this intent of getting a purpose-built specialist facility with more capacity, and I think in the end it was about a $3.5 million project, nearly half which was funded by the federal government, but most importantly, more than half funded by philanthropy in the community, which is quite remarkable, right? And Peter and Burke, Britton and Future Generation played a key part in it, because then it enabled us to do this outdoor therapy / play space, which the team like working in, and most importantly, the kids like hanging out in. So every day when you come to work, it's great seeing the kids outside, and they're the sorts of things that community support enables you to do. Without that grant and without the government support, there's a chance we'd still be where we were 5 or 6 years ago.
Is it worth, Shaun, just getting you to touch, or I think it'd be worth it if you would be happy to do so, touch on the big application that we've got running at the moment to try and make our facility even better again?
So we're currently got plans underway to go again, just to kind of add some new dimensions to the current facility that we've got. So, a key aspect of that is we've got intentions to add a hydrotherapy pool, an expansion of the outdoor therapy / play space, the introduction of some kind of tele hubs, because there's, what we've learned over the last 2 years is the way in which we can better utilise technology to provide services, particularly to those in regional and rural areas, and the addition of some specialist dedicated teaching and learning areas. One of the things that Kids Plus is really starting to move in is to become a deliverer and a provider of specialist PD programs for other allied health professionals in the field. So all that's going to take space, and it's got a pretty hefty price tag that comes with it. But where it's about a $6 million project, and we're halfway. So far we've secured about $3 million in principal commitments, and before us we've got a significant grant application in with the federal government, and fingers crossed it goes their way. If it doesn't, back to the drawing board, and we'll find other ways.
It's interesting, Shaun, you were saying earlier had you thought about academia as your direction. Now you're working at Deakin Uni, just not in Deakin Uni, but on the Deakin University site. So that was a pretty good relationship with Deakin also, the use of ground on the Deakin site. How did that come about?
So it came about through a connection that Kids Plus had with some senior members of the Deakin medical and health teams. We presented the case and why we thought that it might be a good fit for essentially a community service provider to be situated on a university campus. And I think, full credit to Deakin, they, I think, saw the opportunity and were more than keen to support it. To some extent, I'm still a little bit surprised that it all came together. I think it's. I can't imagine too many other universities offering up, premium land on campus to a small specialist community service provider. But I think, in recent years, Deakin has shown a real tendency to be creative in the way in which they want to work. And it's really exciting for us, and I think it's exciting for Deakin too. So we're just starting to build some new collaborations. A couple of months ago we appointed our first joint research fellow, and the primary intent of that role is to be able to help with the translation of good research into practice, which is often the missing ingredient,
The gap.
when it comes to research. We're able to provide great learning opportunities for Deakin students. Earlier this week, one of our therapists delivered a kind of keynote lecture to some of the Deakin OT students. There's lots of different synergies that are starting to take place. And in addition to that, the Deakin Warren Ponds campus is just a really lovely place to
Pretty special, isn't it?
work. So we're really fortunate on a number of fronts.
It's always a pleasure driving in for a board meeting. It's not a bad place to come into.
Yep.
It's really nice, yeah.
You were talking about the opportunities for the graduates, like the OT and speech graduates at Deakin, to have exposure to Kids Plus. This might be a naive question, but what proportion of the OT speeches are employed directly by Kids Plus versus contracted from other service providers?
So I think to date we've only had a couple of Deakin graduates that have come on to work with us at Kids Plus, but I've got no doubt that that's going to change dramatically in the years ahead, because the students come and get a sense of us and we get a sense of them, and I just think that once that relationship's been built, there'll be a lot more of it.
It's still a
in
very
the
young
future.
relationship, isn't it? I mean, you've been there on site for 4 years now?
No. So we're only 18 months in. So we opened December 2020. And then, as we all know, the last 18 months has been heavily impacted by COVID, with essentially Deakin not being on campus and us having kind of restricted access. So we're kind of really at the early days of the
It's
relationship.
huge upside possibilities, yeah. Exciting. I mean, I think that was one of the conversations that we had over the board meeting table a week or two ago, was just the complexities of recruiting specialists. If you can grow the number of people you provide services to, but you have to have the professionals to provide the service, and that's a big area of need, isn't it, to be able to actually find more and more young people coming out of, graduating out of university degrees, and people that want to come and work in a great place like Kids Plus.
Yeah, and it's about getting the right kind of profile of the team. So I think when Kids Plus was pretty small, there was a propensity to have the team filled by really, I guess, experienced mid to advanced career specialists. But now that the team's bigger and 30, 35, 40, it gives you greater ability to get graduates and early career therapists in, because you got an environment where there's we're confident that we can provide good supports around those early career therapists. So that's pretty exciting too, because with the graduates come with lots of energies and ideas, and their training's current. So that's all really positive.
This might be a good segue into sort of the support that anyone that's listening to this podcast can provide for Kids Plus. What do you see as kind of the biggest challenges moving forward? You talked about sort of offering career paths for graduates, fundraising. What are probably the top three things on your priority list, Shaun, that need to be ticked off to take Kids Plus to sort of the next level?
That's really interesting, and it's probably the answer I'm going to give is maybe not the one that you might be looking for. When we think about Kids Plus, we see our roles really to be facilitators, right? So we provide specialist allied health services, but really what we're endeavouring to do is to provide support and help facilitate kids and families to be able to do the things that they want to do, right? So the therapy is really just a means to an end, right? So more and more what we're starting to think about is how do we kind of reimagine what's possible and how do we start to create opportunities, right? Because to some extent in the broader community there are still lots of barriers facing and confronting young people with disabilities, right? So increasingly we're starting to think about, well, how can we as an organisation start to advocate more for the rights of the client group that we work with. So it's got to be much more than just therapy. We're starting to think about, well, how do we find or support a pathway into higher education? Or how do we better facilitate maybe a pathway into employment? Or how do we increase the opportunities that a young person might have to participate in sport or recreation or independent living and those sorts of things? So to some extent, it's not so much now about dollars and trying to get money in to be able to provide services, because the NDIS supports us to do that.
For the therapy side of it.
The therapy side of things. It's how can we do things beyond therapy that are going to make hopefully a really meaningful and tangible impact on a young person's life, and the broader community can play a kind of key role in that too. So if you're a business out there and you're thinking about, recruiting someone, maybe kind of open up the lens to maybe looking at recruiting someone with a disability. If you're involved in a sporting club, it's about thinking about, well, how accessible is the environment in which, whether it be the footy, the cricket or the tennis, or whatever it is taking place. And it doesn't need to be difficult, but it does require a bit of a conscious kind of effort of thinking, are we supporting inclusion and participation as much as we might or should? So in many ways that's become a real focus for Kids Plus at the moment, and it's all about being really conscious about, are we advancing the well-being of a young person?
What does that, like, they come into the kids, at what age are they exiting their relationship, or is that what you're talking about here, extending that out further? Is that the challenge?
No, so I think that in many ways we will continue to be an early intervention service.
Yeah.
So the vast majority of young people we work with are children.
Yeah.
And most of the referrals that come into Kids Plus each year are infants. So we work, with school-age children. What we're finding, though, as our kind of cohort of clients age and then becoming teenagers and young adults and then adults, it's becoming more obvious to us that we've got to find better pathways when they want to start to exit and start becoming...
When there's only 30 at the start, the scalability of finding them places to go and work, obviously still challenging but not as bad when you got 300 coming out the other end. Obviously, is that the challenge? Is you got to be able to make that work on a scalable basis?
And I think it's the challenge for the broader community, right? Around that awareness piece of, are we, as an inclusive society as would like like to think.
I was thinking about when we were talking earlier about. I remember that meeting we went to Melbourne and saw Jeff, and it all happened really quick. And you probably made a captain's call on where that funding went to because we had to. And no client has ever said it. Everyone embraced it and happy to continue with it. But we all thought about it. We probably talked about it, but no one actually did anything about funding. Like no one ever actually went aside and did it. We've probably been, fortunately, almost pushed in front of us to now we're thinking about other charities and other things as well. But there's so many people out there talking about this stuff, but not doing anything about it.
You're right. That prompt for us with Jeff Wilson and Future Generation program, we talked a lot of talk until we...
And then we were just... bang, it was in front of us and we just had to do it. And then now we're looking at all other options.
Yeah, and I think that, to your point, Shaun, bringing that awareness and thinking, how do we actually get people to maybe talk less and do more in this space is really important. And I know that certainly our clients have been... they've embraced the participation in... or involvement that we've sort of helped generate through Future Generations. It's been great in terms of developing awareness, not only for Kids Plus, but some of the other organisations that Burke Britton's involved with. When you were talking about that sort of having a pathway for the kids as they come out of sort of early intervention services, am I right in saying, maybe Peter, you were talking to me about some grants or some programs available for kids as they come out of the Kids Plus?
One of the really exciting things that we've initiated in very recent times is our scholarship program.
That's the word I was looking for, scholarship.
And Shaun mentioned that this was something that he thought would be a great idea, and so I flow on to what you've just been saying, Shaun. As they come through, finish year 12, they've had their therapy, which is now almost hygiene. You NDIS fund it, you do it. But what do you do with those young people for the rest of their lives, so the rest of their lives can be lived the way they want them to be? And this scholarship fund that we now have started, and the objective, we've got $150,000 invested now, and the challenge is to create enough earnings from that to provide scholarships for young people to do a tertiary degree. So the Kids Plus graduates will have the chance to have a degree, and my dream is to make that $500,000 very quickly. So if we could have $500,000 working, we could probably produce 10 or 15 scholarships every year, and it would be a self-generating investment fund that would provide. And it's one of those opportunities you're talking about, Shaun, where let them be able to go on without economic issues to do a tertiary degree, and if the world around can remove some barriers. And so if I have a Kids Plus graduate who's got a degree, well, they should be allowed to have a job too. They should be in a position to get a job too and have a life as close to what they want it to be as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty exciting, and hopefully we'll get to release the first round of scholarships for 2023, right? And it can be for a university degree, a certificate, a TAFE course, and hopefully the scholarship may just act as that incentive for a young person to say, well, yeah, we are going to try and pursue some post-secondary school study. For a number of our kids, the opportunities to go and get a part-time job are more challenging than others. So, some discretionary funds provided by the scholarships can help mitigate that a little bit. And then, best case scenario, the broader employment pool just becomes a little bit more diverse.
I think the key, we've had conversations here at work, but also I think with you a couple of times, Shaun, one of the things that I think we, as Burke Britton, as a business, can do, which I believe is one of the most effective things, is just continue to raise awareness, because there's so many people out there like we were. As Ben said before, we wanted to do something, but you don't get around to doing it because it's not obvious and you don't know. But all of a sudden, if there's an awareness, you know about Kids Plus, you know that there's a scholarship fund that, we could make a donation toward that, or they could require some support at the Kite Festival. They want people to help raise money on the Surf Coast Trek. Those, if people can get involved in things, and the more we can spread the awareness of the great job that Kids Plus do, and all the stuff beyond the therapy, all the things that you're trying to do, I think that communication and awareness is critical, because people will help. We have clients that want to volunteer, like Kids Plus probably are not in a position to have volunteers as such, but some of the charities we look after need volunteers just to come along and do simple jobs. Well, that's great, because we can let them know that they need volunteers over at Geelong Mums, for example, so clients will go and stick their name down and do that volunteer work. So that's one thing I think we can do to continue to help Kids Plus and other not-for-profits.
You mentioned briefly 2 events, so talking about raising awareness. You mentioned a kite festival, you mentioned the Surf Coast Trek. Shaun, do you want to maybe touch on some of those events, the awareness-creating events that Kids Plus have got either in the pipe or that have happened historically that we should get on board with and support?
So the Surf Coast Trek's been around for a few years now, and I think that it's probably one of the kind of preeminent events in the Geelong region. In short, it's a fundraising walk that people start at Aries Inlet and they walk along the coast and end up in Torquay. So it's a 40k walk, and the event goes from strength to strength. We get about 1,000 people take part in the walk each year, but there's scope to grow that. Our intent is to grow that in the years ahead.
Is the Surf Coast Trek, again, excuse my ignorance on this, I have not done the trek, but you can count me in for the next one. Is that done in conjunction with Give Where You Live?
Yep.
Yes, it is.
So they've been partnering with us since the start. It's a great collaboration. And I just to kind of reiterate, it's a great event for the Geelong community. It's not a race. It's all about participation, and it raises significant and really valuable funds for both organisations. The other event that we started last year is the Kids Plus Kite Festival, and we're really kind of excited by the Kite Festival as a concept. In its simplest form, it's just a day about promoting participation and inclusion. It's not shining a spotlight on disability per se. It's more about just putting on an event where people with different abilities come together and can take part in that kind of simple pleasure of flying a kite. It's a really enjoyable day. There's no barriers to participation. All we've got to do is rock up to Rippleside, maybe buy a kite or bring a kite.
Buy a kite or 2.
And get to hang out with lots of young kids having lots of fun.
Have you got the date for us for that, Shaun?
It's the 2nd of October.
Yep.
And it's down at Rippleside. Great location.
Do we need to register to attend or just turn up?
No, so you just turn up. All the kites will be for sale via the Kids Plus website. The page for the kites hasn't been set up just yet, but that'll be set up in the next month or so. And then it's simply a case of getting your family and friends to come along, have a picnic, and get to see lots of kites in the air.
Sounds good. It's close to your birthday too, PB. You could
Very
maybe
close.
PB's kite party, something like that.
Very exciting too, because Shaun's invited Burke, Britton to work very closely with that event this year. So we're really excited to help market the hell out of it and make it a really, really big event with lots of people and thousands of kites in the air. So
that's the aim, right? When you think about lots of things, often there's lots of barriers to participation, whether it be the physical environment or cost or distance or those sorts of things. Whereas there's a great simplicity to the concept of the Kite Festival. So we really think it's going to grow over time.
Look forward to it.
Very much so. And the Surf Coast Trek, what time of the year is that held?
So it's always held around April to May. It's dependent on the tides. So we've got to pick the date depending on what the tides are doing, and then we work it in around Easter and the Bells Festival and those sorts of things. So we've just had it this year. We'll regather and then we'll do it all again next year. I think the date for next year is late April, maybe even early May. So we've got plenty of time to plan for that.
Time for me to get my ankle rehabbed and be ready to do it.
You're not walking, PB. I'll carry you. I've had to carry you a couple of times on that trek. I think we did do that trek from Torquay to
We did
to
when
Lorne.
we were training with Tommy Couch. Yeah, it was, and he tricked us too because we went from Torquay down to Lorne, and we thought we were going down to Lorne and back. This was a Saturday training session.
It was actually Torquay to Anglesey, I think.
Anglesey. Sorry, my apologies. Torquay to Anglesey. Yeah, and we got to Anglesey, and he said we'll have a half an hour break before we head back, and next minute the little minibus turned up, and so it was a nice surprise. We didn't have to walk back, but good fun.
Now, I'm mindful of time. We'll keep it under an hour. We're up to 45 minutes at the moment. So, other than the couple of events we've talked about, Shaun, what are some of the other ways that people, the community, can actually support Kids Plus and get involved?
Well, I think probably further to what I was saying earlier, I think if organisations or individuals are in a position to be able to make a financial contribution, we're always open to discussing that and looking at it and then trying to see what might fit, whether it be a new piece of equipment, whether it be a scholarship, whether it be to support some of the things that we're doing in sending kids to the snow and the beach and those sorts of things. But in addition to that, I think it's just probably putting that challenge out to others around, are there ways in which they can look to support young people with disabilities more broadly, whether it's in relation to Kids Plus or not, but it's just thinking about, are there different ways in which we might be able to make a contribution? And there's lots of different ways in which that might take shape, but at the end of the day, young people with disabilities are looking for opportunities and involvement and participation just as much as everyone else, and it's trying to think creatively about how best that can happen, whether it be in the workplace or a sporting club or a community club and those sorts of things. So nothing specific, it's more just, I guess, putting that challenge out for people to think about different ways in which they may be able to provide support, and it doesn't always have to be money.
I think the awareness, even just listening to you talk about Kids Plus and bringing awareness to it is a powerful thing. Certainly, people can make contributions. They can make a monetary contribution, but like we said, with our involvement, it just took more the awareness. Like there was I think the good in us to contribute in some way, shape or form, but just having it front of mind, it was the key. I think even having you on the podcast today, getting this out to our clients and other people that want to understand more about Kids Plus, hopefully brings that awareness and has many more people actively thinking about how they involve children with a disability in the community, in their workplace. So thanks for coming on today, Shaun. We really appreciate your time. Any of you got any other closing comments for Shaun before we wrap this up?
I just want to thank you also, mate, for giving us an hour of your day. You're a busy man with lots and lots going on, so terrific that you'd make the time to come over and chat to us. But we want to make sure we continue to work with you and Kids Plus to get the best possible outcomes long term in as many ways as we can.
I think even I was obviously listening a lot, and I thought I knew a fair bit about it because we obviously talk about it a bit here, but you realise you just know such a tiny piece of what it actually is. So for some people they have no idea, maybe never even heard of the Kids Plus, branding before. You just learn so much. So I think then we're aware of it, and then you're more inclined to actually connect to it. And we've been fortunate. You have the tangibility of knowing that the outdoor area. We've sort of got that connection to it. People like to know where their money goes as well. As much as everyone wants to contribute, they like to know if they are putting some money in, it's actually going to some equipment or an item or a project as well, which I think has been really good for the clients. We can bring that story, photos, experiences back to them. So hopefully lots more of that to come.
And look out for all the marketing of the Kite Day, the Kite Festival.
So just on that, where can people find more information about the Kite Festival, the Surf Coast Trek and Kids Plus, Shaun? Where can we find you?
So the best place is the website, just kidsplus.org.au. Heaps of information about the Surf Coast Trek. That's got its own dedicated web page. If you Google Surf Coast Trek, it'll come up front and centre. And then all the info about the Kite Festival will be on the Kids Plus website and socials in the coming months. Just from my perspective, appreciate the opportunity to come in and have a chat. And we really appreciate and admire all the energy and enthusiasm that Peter and Burke Britton have brought to Kids Plus in recent years. It's really rewarding when you get a sense that there are those in the community that value the work that we do, and we get a sense of that through the support that we get. And the team at Burke Britton have been at the forefront of that. So really appreciative. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Shaun. Thanks,
you.
Ben. Thanks, Peter.
Good on you, Jay.
Cheers.
Thanks heaps.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Burke Britton FP, or Google Burke Britton Financial Partners. Check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening.
Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decision, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, financial situation, needs, and seek independent advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances.
All right, hit it.
That translates to don't be a moron and act on what some random person says on a podcast. Take personal responsibility, do your homework, ask questions, and speak to an actual human that knows what they're talking about before you do anything. PB Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Burke Britton Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of AMP Financial Planning Limited, AFS, licence number 232706.